savings and loan programs that you can develop internally in your communities. So I think that, yes, it is our aspiration to help come up with that kind of capital so that you can have also fair terms of loans so that you're not getting charged too much interest and not losing all your money in impossible relationships with lenders. But I also think importantly to provide for donors like us to provide funds for this kind of youth camp where you all learn about how the economy of food works and you become advocates so that you can go down to your local bank or to the African Development Bank or to the Ministry of Agriculture or to the Ministry of Commerce and say, we need public programs to support this. We don't think it's right that you're subsidizing chemical inputs and foreign imported seeds. We think you should be allocating the public money in Uganda to help us small entrepreneurs. So I think it's both sides. I think it's providing you with support to do that kind of advocacy and also providing you support for the seed capital you need for your work.
As the last point of our discussion, you talked about youth after here go and the importance of this youth camp. To have them outside, I think. Do you have any last words of like take home advice or request to make these young people who are coming when they go back home? What do you think the role they need?
Okay. Well, thank you. I think first of all, I just want to say that I go to a lot of, well, I haven't been recently because of COVID, but I used to travel and have the opportunity to visit a lot of work of farmer organizations and consumer organizations and networks of people that care about the environment and a healthy food system. And to be honest, in many cases, I mostly come across people, my age and an aging farmer population. And we hear a lot about youth leaving the countryside to go to the city to seek opportunities because life is too difficult in the countryside and there's too much importation of food and not enough opportunities to make a good livelihood as you begin to start your families. So first of all, I just want to congratulate you, and I think that you're really an example. I really mean that sincerely. That I work across the world. I work in Brazil, in Mongolia, in Southeast Asia, and people are asking, how do we get the youth more involved in the work? So I think that's another question that I want to hear from you. How have you done it? I mean, look, there are 100 youth here together thinking about these issues, trying to struggle with what do we need, how do we build the system that we need. So I'd say that you're really showing the future. You're really showing how to bring people together, and I think that the kind of ways that you're working on all the various aspects of it's not just about farming, but of course it is about food production. But as Eddie said, it's about producing, manufacturing the kind of inputs. It's about finding space in the local markets. It's about opening local cafes that are selling the food that comes from your farms and your neighbors' farms. So I think that to continue that kind of focus on solving the problems and building such a coalition as you seem to have done, just looking at the names of the organizations here and hearing about the Red Cross and the local authorities and World Vision and the Human Rights Organization, I think that's exactly the kind of coming together of various organizations because in the end, food touches us all. So I just want to maybe close just by saying, you're not alone in any way. I mean, I'm very privileged to have had the opportunity to get around the world and see some of these movements, but there is a cry, there are demands, there's well-organized movements around the world that are doing similar work to you. But again, I really hold I hold a great appreciation for the work that you do because I think that this whole very difficult issue of how to revive youth involvement in the food system is critical, and I think you've come a long way, and I really look forward to all of us. What I'm going to learn here today, I look forward to sharing with the other organizations and movements that I visit around the world. So I just want to thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for this time. Bamemba baffe aba community. Yes. Bamemba ba community omwami ono yeeyanjudde ye Daniel ava mu kitongole ekigabirizi ky'obuyambi ekiyitibwa Buikwe Fund. Ekitongole ekyo nze omu ku babe baaki ab'amagezi ndi advisor ekitongole ekyo mpulira advisory board ey'ekitongole ekyo, so tubeera nga tugamba nti wane eno weetaaga obuyambi wano tewakola ki teweetaaga. Era nga be bamu ku bagabirizi b'obuyambi abagabirira slow food, abagabirira organizations nga Saferoad n'ebitongole ebirala bingi mu nsi yonna biwera ebitongole nga 10 ebifuna ssente okuva mu kirongole omwami kyakulira. Koze naye kati emyaka 6 naye ekyabadde ayogerako ekisinga obukulu ebibuzo byemubuuza ebisinga bikwata ku lwaki yazze wano. Tubadde n'olukungaana olukulu era nejjo twabadde paka budde bwakiro enagide wano tubadde tukyalina meetings n'enkya ne ku Mande meetings zikyagenda mu maaso ng'olukungaana olwo lukwata ku butale abantu abatandika bizinesi ne webanga faamu bannimiro naye ate n'okufuna obutale obw'ebintu ebirimiddwa mu ngeri yaffe eya agroecology. Kati nga Mwami Sulaiti community yammwe yeekola tufunye tutya obutale, tusaze tutya amagezi. Olukungaana olwo lwategekeddwa afisa Munyonyo bapatna baffe era tukolagana nabo era tugenda twala ebiteeso byateeseddwa naffe nga slow food tulinako bye twatutte bye tugenda okukola ki okuteeka mu nkola nga ate mmwe bafamazi be tukolagana nabo mwe mugenda okukola ki okuganyulwamu. So twagala tuteekewo wakiri obutale bubiri mu disitulikiti y'e Buikwe obw'abalimi abalima mu nnima ya agroecology. Ensonga endala yeewunyiza nnyo okulaba nti abavubuka tusobola okuva mu bitundu ebyenjawulo ne tutandika okwogera ku bintu by'emmere n'ebyokulima ebitongole ebirala tebikola ki atambudde nnyo wala ne tatera kukiraba. Oluusi abamu babuuza n'okubuuza nga dona waabagamba nti bannaye muteekeeko abavubuka mu byobulimi bagamba tukikole tutya kuba tetumanyi nawo we tukola ki tetugenda kubasanga. Naye wano eno kyewunyiza nti abavubuka basobola okujja ne bava yonna gye bavudde ne bajja wano boogere ku byobulimi ne ku byemmere. Era n'agamba nti kikulu nnyo okwongera bo nga badona okuteeka ssente mu nkuŋŋaana nga zino ez'abavubuka ne basinkana abantu ne balaba ebintu ebyenjawulo. Era tusuubira nze ekyo nja kusigala nga nti mujjukirwa kampu eddako era nayo tukikole ki wadde waneno tewabaddewo nnyo buyambi naye tulina okusagula alabe ng'ateekamuko. So ekyo ye kimwewunyisizza nnyo n'ebirala byayogeddeko n'agamba nti wetugamba okuteeka ssente mu bantu abatandika businesses oba ne agroecological enterprises oba n'obutale bwetuyita territorial markets tewetaaga kubanga oli mulimi wekka oba si balimi bokka nti oba n'abatunda ebintu n'abatandika bizinesi endala wabula n'abakola inputs ebigimusa ebyaffe ebinnansangwa ng'osobola okubipakaginga n'obigira eyo nayo area weeri. Abakola eddagala erifuuyira ebirime eryaffe ery'ekinnansi eyo nayo area weeri nabo baagala gitunuulira engeri gye bagiteekamu ssente ebintu ebyo bibeere ekkatale ng'omuntu asobola okugenda n'abigula nga bwe tugula bino ebya bulijjo. So mu bumpimpi ensonga ze tubadde twogerako n'okulaba nti abavubuka twongera tutya ye doona alaba atya ekintu ky'abavubuka okwenyigira mu byobulimi era ye mumuwadde ekyokulabirako ekirungi nti musobola okutuula n'abavubuka ne mubalambuza ne mubalaga ne mubasomesa ate nabo ne bakkiriza okubeera wano. So mu bumpimpi ebyo bye tubadde twogerako. Anyone with a question? This is Daniel, you were last year in 2016. Yes. Kimutwalira emyaka 6 okuddamu okulabika. Nze mulaba. I see you quite frequently. But these people it will take time for them to see you again. Probably if you come back to the next should come.
Yeah.
So if you have any question, kyeyagala okubuuza omwani ono ku bintu byayogedde. If you have any question you want to ask Daniel about what he has said, we are going to welcome only 3 questions. Ekisooka, let me take the microphone.
Thank you very much, Daniel and colleague. My question is, for as much as you're talking about the agricultural ecological fund, I don't think that every small farmer comes over to the same institution. What are the collaborating institutions that the farmer would approach? Thank you.
Daniel, we can take that one on, or you take like 3? Okay.
Thank you so much, Daniel. My name is Irene from Global Youth Biodiversity Network, the Uganda chapter. And we are a youth consortium that advocate for biodiversity conservation. So I wanted to know if you have any alliance that unites youth, or in case you have a program that brings youth together, youth in restoration, in environmental restoration, or in case you have some support in terms of funding or partnerships. Are you open to collaborations? Thank you.
Also one from Elfas.
Hi guys, hi Daniel and John. I work for Slow Food Kenya, and as part of my work at Slow Food Kenya, I do communication for Slow Food Youth Network in Africa. And it has been our wish together with John to work a lot to see that we have a very strong network of slow food youth. These are young people who promote the philosophy of, production of good food in good, clean and fair way. And it has not been easy. We have been trying to push this, I think, for the last 3 years. And our main goal is to have an umbrella organization, apart from local slow food Uganda, local slow food Kenya. This should stand alone thing in Africa. Do you think it can work in a way that, as a donor, maybe we stand as an umbrella of youth in Africa? Are there opportunity for collaboration funding?
John also has one. So we are taking one more.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Daniel, for the wonderful presentation. My question is about research. Here in Africa, research is so biased that it's mostly against agroecology. It is just based on conventional farming. And we have seen mostly the farmer-led research working. People are making their own research as farmers, and it works out. And I would want to ask Agroecology Fund, how far have you invested in research, agroecological research, mostly in Africa? Thank you.
Thank you. Any last one? Okay, I will let Daniel take those 4. Okay. Thierry.
Thank you, Daniel, for your presentation. So I would like to ask, which country in Africa are you working in? Are you ready to go far from the African country, especially for the youth? Because the youth who are practically applied the agroecological, so have many issues to tackle. What is your plan for the African youth? Thank you.
Maybe you say where you come from and your name.
My name is Thierry Ngenakumana. I'm come from Rwanda.
Thank you all. Daniel, we can take those.
Okay, wow, you asked very many very good questions and very difficult questions. Maybe I'll take the easiest one first, which was, not that it's very easy, but I think it was a very good question from the gentleman about the research and about the bias in research. Yeah, just to say that, we see that all the time, and if you look at the donor agencies and where they're putting their investment money, they put it into big research institutes, some academic, some affiliated with multilateral aid agencies, and they're all, very close to the agrochemical industry, and they're doing research about genetically modified organisms and, inputs and the high-yielding varieties, that kind of thing. And yes, very little that derives from the lived experiences of farmers that are working with their landscapes and the technologies at their disposal. So we actually have designed a very small initiative, something we call the Grassroots Evidence for Agroecology. And so we have this kind of other small grant program where we're providing some support. And actually, Slow Food East Africa has been participating to reflect on what is the evidence we have about the impact of transforming our food systems towards agroecological improvement. What is the evidence we have, and how can we present it in a way that's convincing to young people, to older farmers, convincing to district managers, convincing to the National Ministry of Agriculture. So I think it's really critically important that we balance out that bias that you say, and I think so that it's important that farmers have the capacity, farmers and consumers and people dedicated to agroecology have the resources they need to do their own research, but also to collaborate with so-called professional researchers, even though, and to break through some of those biases. So yes, we have a small program to do that, and we're really happy that Slow Food has been participating with us. And we're trying to do that across the world so that we really generate a base of evidence that doesn't just come from these so-called objective scientists, but really comes from the aspirations and needs of the communities. So that's quickly on that. With regard to the other questions, which were all, I think, what all the questions had in common was, well, at the end of the day, how do we get more resources for our work, I think. And there was a couple of questions specifically about youth work, youth and biodiversity, work in building a stronger network of youth and agroecology across the African continent. I think the other gentleman specifically said about some of the producers and how to get financing for them as well.
How they join the collaboration.
And how they join the collaboration. Well, you know, I think that there's so many, I mean, we can talk for a long time about that. I mean, the Agroecology Fund, I mean, I'm going to be totally honest with you here. So we are a fund, we gather funds from wealthy foundations in the US and Europe. We give away about $4 million US across the world. So we work in 70 countries. So if you do the math, at the end of the day, plus that's not a whole lot of money. Plus, we're leaving out 140 countries that we aren't funding in. So just to say, the resources that we have are insufficient for the important work that's happening across the world. So we're very blessed to have some committed donors. I spend all my day, this is what I do all day. I get on the telephone, I get on the Zoom, I go to conferences, and I try to approach donors to say, look, here are youth across Africa working on biodiversity, working on agroecology. They need your resources for their research, for their businesses, for their movement building. So just to know, I mean, that is the work of the Agroecology Fund. Again, we're a small donor, but we want to influence the World Bank. We want to influence the African Development Bank. We want to influence, not ourselves, the Uganda government, because that's your job. We don't approach governments. But we are looking for financing for your work. And we think the best thing that we can invest in is networks of powerful young people like yourselves that can push your authorities, your governments, to make the investments that they should be making in you and agroecological food systems. So I would say we have a kind of an open program, and in the sense that we're happy to receive your applications, and I think the best person to receive them through, we have Eddie as an advisor to the fund. But I have to be honest to say that we can't commit because the demand is so excessive. Not excessive, because it's all well-deserved. But I can only promise that we'll give very fair reading to and interact with you and seek other ways, because I should just say, just on the level of, well, East Africa and Africa broadly, one alliance that we provide support to is AFSA, the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. Now that's a continental alliance. We're losing power. It's a network of networks, right? And I know that Slow Food participates in AFSA, and I don't really know if the level of youth participation in AFSA is adequate or not. I encourage you all to try to influence the agenda of AFSA so that it has more youth representation and really meets the needs of youth movements. It looks like you've done an excellent job of really building a strong youth representation in Slow Food, and I think that's an example. And I think Slow Food internationally, because they have those kind of contacts and that kind of visibility, also provides resources back to you in a way. So I think that I think that participation in those kind of networks where you can make more visible your work, and it's really great to see here that there's other donors like the World Vision, for example. I don't often get the chance to collaborate with them, and I think for them to see the connections between their work on whatever I saw there, child participation in decision making and child rights. I mean, I think making those connections, we're going to bring more resources to the table. But I wish I could point to an institution and say this financial institution can meet your needs. I think
need to do the best work you can and present yourselves. And I think you're operating, unfortunately, in a horribly disadvantaged system in which some people have the resources, they invested poorly in a system that's wrong, that's unsustainable in export agriculture, and we're trying to build a network, a community of donors that see things correctly, that support the good work that you're doing. So please know that I'm with you, I stand in solidarity with you, and we're working to build that resource base.
Thank you, Daniel. We have lost power, but I think it came at the right time when we are ending this food talk.